FPL Gameweek24 Wildcard Special on the FPL Joe YouTube channel. Today we'll be doing a deep dive into the Gameweek24 Wildcard, looking at two potential wildcard drafts to consider and analysing both, not just in Gameweek24, but looking all the way forward to Gameweek 32 and beyond. We'll also be discussing wider chip strategy, plus all the major considerations for Wildcard 24, with the key indicators of whether you should or shouldn't be using the chip this week. And of course, all timestamps are in the description if you want to skip to a specific part. So to start, let's take a step back and look at the entire remainder of the season. There's a lot to take in here, so let's break it down. I've highlighted a couple of key game weeks, double game weeks in green, blank game weeks in red, and key fixture swings in white. Note that the double game week 26 is provisional, and we're still waiting on confirmation of the Arsenal vs Wolves fixture being moved to this game week. It's also conditional on Arsenal beating or drawing with Chelsea in the second leg of their EFL Cup semi-final, but as they play at home and go in with the advantage, there's a very high chance they progress here. And outside of this, we're also expecting Man City vs Palace to be moved from game week 31 to 33. This is also conditional on Man City holding their 2-0 advantage against Newcastle in their second leg of the EFL Cup semi-final. This is also at home, so there's a similarly high chance of City progressing too, even more so with the 2-goal lead. This one, however, can't be brought forwards, as Palace won't be free in the game week 26 midweek due to their European run. If Chelsea do manage to overturn their deficit against Arsenal, they also do now have the possibility of moving their fixture to game week 26 against Everton, now that they've also secured a top 8 finish in the UCL. But there's still a lot here that we don't know. We don't know for sure whether there'll actually be a double game week in 26, even if it's possible. There's a small chance that different teams blank in blank game week 31 in the event of an EFL Cup semi-final upset. We don't know which teams will be blanking in game week 34, and we don't know which teams will be doubling in double game week 33 or double game week 36. And double game week 33 is the big one here. We could feasibly have a full squad of 15 double game week players available in this one, which could facilitate a huge bench boost in this double. This isn't guaranteed and does depend on which of the Premier League teams make it to the FA Cup semi-finals and who's drawn against each other, but this does make up a huge amount of the appeal on going for Wildcard 32 instead of Wildcard 24, which we'll be discussing later on when we're looking at the Wildcard 24 drafts. So the strategy in Wildcard 24 is to maximise the short-term fixtures in game week 24 to 27, get rid of any of your punts that haven't worked out, fix any injuries in your team as well as non-playing dead spots on your bench, and ultimately build a solid long-term team that needs as little attention as possible. And you might be asking why. I thought Wildcard 24 was about differentials, playing aggressive and going against the template. But the truth is, if you want to maximise your total points across this season to ultimately win your mini-league or get the highest possible rank, it's not. Your number one goal on Wildcard 24 is to roll as many transfers as possible to reach 5 by game week 32, allowing you to basically simulate a mini wildcard to prepare for that massive double game week 33, and this is going to be the only way to realistically keep up pace with managers who opt for Wildcard 32. For the upcoming fixtures, the key fixture swings occur in game week 24, game week 28 and game week 32. These are the ones highlighted in white. We'll focus first on the immediate fixture swing in game week 24. Chelsea have an outstanding fixture run over the next 4 game weeks, playing West Ham, Wolves, Leeds and Burnley back to back, but from game week 28 they're going to be a sell. Palace have got some great fixtures which continue all the way up to game week 30, but then they're expected to blank in game week 31, and after that their fixtures will get a lot tougher. Man United are also in top form and have a great run of fixtures over the next 5 game weeks, and a decent run of fixtures throughout the rest of the season too, having already played both Arsenal and Chelsea twice this season. So to start with, we're going to be looking at my current team, and we'll start off with goalkeepers and defenders. So for context, let's have a look at the clean sheet odds courtesy of 11FI. With the potential double in game week 26, Arsenal further extend their predicted dominance in clean sheets, and even without this extra fixture, they'd still be in first place for expected numbers. Chelsea are a comfortable second place owing to their great fixtures. The defensive data isn't fantastic, and they've actually overperformed their XGC, meaning they've even conceded fewer goals than they were already expected to. But with the fixtures, having some great coverage is still worthwhile. Palace placed third with 2 great home fixtures against Burnley and Wolves, and notably with Palace, as mentioned before, their fixture is going to stay strong all the way up until game week 31, so they're better long-term holds compared to Chelsea. The same is also true for Arsenal, whose fixtures are going to stay strong for the rest of the season, although in their case, you can already play them pretty much every week anyway due to their defensive quality. For that reason, we've actually opted to go triple Arsenal defence with Raya, Gabriel and Timber. But the defensive quality isn't the only reason for tripling up on their defence rather than their attack, and we'll see why when we get to game week 31. The first move that we will be making is Collins to Chalobah. He's the most nailed Chelsea defender for minutes, and with game week 26 being midweek and on a tight turnaround, we'll see the increased chance of benching for non-nailed players. And this is going to be amplified for Chelsea, whose easier fixture run make those Premier League games a good opportunity to rest players. And besides minutes, he's also got a good defcon for 90, reaching the threshold in 7 of his last 8 games, and he also offers some attacking threat from corners. We'll then follow this up by moving Lacroix to Munoz. It's a simple upgrade for the Palace defence, and with Munoz having a recent injury that put him out for 8 games, it's kind of easy to forget how incredible he was. Munoz has averaged a staggering 6 points per match so far, occupying a very attacking role for Palace despite being listed in FPL as a defender, with 6 goal involvements already this season. The main caveat is going to be the uncertainty around Palace. This includes their overall poor form which continues, as well as some recent comments from Glasner which do seem to have been buried by now. Add to this Guehi's departure to City, which will further weaken the defence, and the chance of clean sheets isn't as certain as it was earlier in the season. However, for the upside that he offers, he's a lock in my wildcard team, with the good medium-term fixture run that Palace has. There is an argument for going double Palace defence, especially if they pick up in form, but if you're on wildcard 24, don't. We'll discuss why this is as we look forwards beyond Game Week 24. But for now, finishing up in defence, we're going to be moving Hall to Senesi. Senesi is the undisputed go-to Bournemouth defender in FPL. He tops the defcon charts across all defenders with a staggering 13 defcon per 90. He's also nailed for minutes and provides great attacking threat too, over 0.2 XGI per 90, logging 4 assists this season so far. But if you're tight on funds, there's a new budget defender option emerging, Hill. I've been recommending him as a go-to for sub 4 million defenders since back in Game Week 22, and he's not disappointed since then. Hill is now a 90-minute starter for Bournemouth, having solidified his place in the team and attracted a lot of praise from Areola. He's now hit defcon in his last 5 games in a row, playing every single minute. He was also pretty unlucky that his defcon wasn't counted in Game Week 22 due to a late Opta update when Bournemouth had the final fixture of the week, but that doesn't affect his stellar record and output consistency. He's also now on all long throws following Semenyu's departure, which makes him a fantastic asset for only 3.9 million. I honestly don't think there's a better option for that price between now and Game Week 31, especially with Bournemouth's brilliant fixture until then. For my team, we'll be swapping him back to Senesi. It provides a decent return on the extra 0.9 mil investment, but he is a great option if you don't have those funds available. And that completes our defence, so now we'll be moving on to midfield. We'll start by moving Gordon to Mbeumo. It goes without saying why Gordon isn't in the Wildcard 24 team, but as for Mbeumo, he looks like he's solidified his place in United's team as the main number 9, and with Dorgu sadly injured, out for up to 10 weeks, Cunha will have the flexibility to play down the left, reducing contention for the number 9 role, which has seen reduced minutes for Mbeumo in recent game weeks. And with Bruno back and playing in the number 10 role, United's attack could be a real force to be reckoned with. And one sticking point as a United fan, while the 2 victories over Man City and Arsenal were a major achievement, they weren't a complete shock. United have a great record in games where they're not controlling possession, leading to historically good wins against opposition like Man City, Arsenal and informed Liverpool sides. It's when we're given possession and required to break down defences that we've really struggled, so we await the Fulham game as the first big test of this. But outside Mbeumo, and as a much higher priority, Bruno Fernandes. If you don't own him, get him, it's just as simple as that. Alongside Gabriel, he's the only player in FPL who I wouldn't even consider selling outside of a major injury, even more so than Haaland. He's got endless routes to points, is central to one of the best attacking sides in the league, and hoovers up bonus points. He's even somehow managed to get defcon while playing as the 10 as well, although likely with less frequency going forwards. And on a similar note, Enzo Fernandez. He's kind of like a Bruno light in that he offers multiple routes to points, can play as a 6, 8 or a 10, and is the best Chelsea attacker for certainty of minutes. Alongside Chalobah, he makes up my main Chelsea coverage for the stellar 4-game fixture run. And then next up in midfield, we'll be moving Foden to Rodgers. Much like Gordon, the less said about Foden the better, but Rodgers is really emerging as the analytics enigma. He's a consistent overperformer of XG, in line with Villa overall this season. What we do know is that he's a minutes monster, playing 90 minutes practically every game. He's also managed 7 goals and 5 assists this season so far, and can even hit defcon in the odd game. But with Rodgers, what you're really getting is a highly consistent long-term asset. You can play him pretty much every week, you know he'll play every game, and he'll get a decent number of returns as well, even if his expected numbers don't look that way. You can basically buy him now and hold until Game Week 36, or just for the rest of the season and with minimal concern. This is massive on Wildcard 24, where building up free transfers is crucial. And the last midfield move that we'll be making is Potts up to Douglas Luiz. We're removing the dead spot in the team, giving us 15 usable players. Douglas Luiz is an interesting addition at only 4.9 million, loaned back from Juventus, who've been loaning him to Forest, and as such don't pay too much attention to his previous numbers from this season as he wasn't playing at Villa. The reason they've brought him back is due to key injuries with Tielemans, Kamara and McGinn, ranging from 6 weeks out to season ending. He'll therefore be very comfortable for minutes, and here's the bonus, he's likely on penalties, a role Tielemans would have been fulfilling, but with him out to 8 to 10 weeks the spot is wide open, and Douglas Luiz's record places him in top spot for spot kicks. And granted, Villa don't win as many of them as we'd like, but when there's a starting midfielder for a top 3 team on pens and at 4.9 million, it's very hard to argue against it. So lastly in attack, looking at forwards. As frustrating as he's been, Haaland doesn't budge from the Wildcard 24 team. Despite the poor form, I don't think anyone is questioning whether Haaland will bounce back at some point, and whether you view the Wolves benching as a motivate of Haaland or a well-needed rest, what isn't up for question is his potency when he's on it. And with a draft targeting long-term sustainability, the last thing we want is to be burning transfers to fit him back in as soon as he scores a hat-trick. But besides Haaland, we'll be swapping both of our forward spots, meaning Thiago to Evanilson and Mark Guiu to Krupi Jr. Thiago's got a tough fixture run coming up, so while he's a potential rebuy from Game Week 28, Evanilson is even better in the medium term, with a fantastic fixture run from Game Week 24 through to 31. He's also expected to be on pens, although Krupi might be contesting that, and he's comfortable for minutes and starts. He's also the undisputed talisman of Bournemouth, following Semenyu's departure to City. And as for Krupi, he gives us our final starting player. He's slowly cementing himself in the Bournemouth attacking side, with Areola praising how he's adapted to playing deeper behind Evanilson. So while Krupi would clearly love to be Bournemouth's main number 9, it's a positive for his certainty of minutes that he can be flexible and play where needed, which is what we need from our 15th player. This also completes the Bournemouth triple up for their excellent medium-term fixture run. And on Bournemouth, you might be concerned or interested by their new signing, Rayan. It's likely that he'll work his way into the team gradually as he adapts to the Premier League, and when he is on the pitch, he'll be playing as a right winger, which sadly for Alex Jimenez owners means he won't be occupying the same attacking positions anymore, as he did in their last game, or at least not with the same consistency. But thankfully for Evanilson and Krupi, they shouldn't see too much direct competition for their respective roles. And that finalises our Wildcard 24 draft, but as I've alluded to, that's only half the story. So moving on to Game Week 25, I've worked on the basis that going into Game Week 24, you only had one free transfer, so that's what we're then going to be starting with in Game Week 25. Then on to Game Week 26, we can see we're all set up well for the Arsenal double game week if it's confirmed to happen here, alongside a sea of green fixtures for Chelsea, Palace, United and City assets. Then on to Game Week 28, with transfers rolled, let's have a look at the fixtures from Game Week 28 till the end of the season. Chelsea, who were the priority buys in Game Week 24, now sit dead last in the table. Brentford's fixtures do pick up massively. Fulham have also got a good run until Game Week 31, but after that they're probably a sell. And Bournemouth are in the same position, although we've already had 4 solid fixtures from their assets by now. So with that in mind, the plan in Game Week 28 is simple: no more Chelsea. We'll be transferring Enzo to Schade and Chalobah to Collins. Schade is the second highest scorer of XG in the last 6 weeks, and makes a fantastic replacement for Enzo once his fixtures dry up. He's also very solid for minutes, which is exactly what we want for a long-term pick. Similarly, Collins is a lock in the Brentford side. He offers over 10 def per 90 on average, plus attacking threat from corners. As mentioned in the previous video, he was the top scoring defender between Game Week 16 and Game Week 21, a comfortable replacement for the outgoing Chalobah. And then on to blank Game Week 31. This is where we finally see the value of our Wildcard 24 picks, and I'll be very hesitant about going into any Wildcard 24 draft that doesn't factor in how the team's going to look by the time we get to Game Week 31. So with Arsenal, Man City, Palace and Wolves expected to be the teams blanking, we'll make the following substitutes: Raya for Dubravka, Timber for Krupi, Gabriel for Senesi, and Haaland for Douglas Luiz. And this is why Raya is so key to my Wildcard 24 draft. By having a blanking keeper, we save 3 spots on the bench for outfield players, in this case Haaland, Gabriel and Timber. Had we chosen to go for a triple up on Arsenal's outfield players, such as Gabriel, Timber and Rice, we'd be forced to sell one of them if we wanted to hold Haaland through the blank. And we'd want to do that, because with his price almost $1 million higher than when I bought him, it's a massive hit to team value to have to transfer him out and then transfer him back in again, and we'll want as much team value as possible going into double game week 33. And if you're thinking, I'll just go without Haaland from here, sure, you could, but there's a good chance that he'll have a double game week of Burnley away and Brentford at home in double game week 36, where many managers are going to plan to triple captain him, so it's up to you if you fancy taking on those odds. Blank game week 31 is the same reason why I haven't opted for a second Palace defender, such as Richards, nor a Wolves player like Mane. Both would necessitate extra transfers in blank game week 31 to reach the 11 starters. We do have one player too many as is, Munoz, and looking at Palace's fixtures after game week 31, even with their expected double in game week 33, the fixtures still aren't ideal, so we'll be looking to move him to a better long-term asset to close out the season. Villa and Leeds provide some of the best options here, and it's worth bearing in mind that we'll have a clearer picture, although not confirmed, of who will be doubling in game week 33 by this point, so that will influence who the replacement is. Similarly, if Timber hasn't performed as expected, or Arsenal somehow fail to make the later stages of the FA Cup, meaning that they don't have a double game week coming, we might choose to offload them instead of Munoz. But for now, we're going to provisionally move Munoz to cash. And just like that, we've navigated blank game week 31. But that's only half the story. So moving on to Game Week 32, the cracks start to show for Wildcard 24. We'll start by restoring our key assets, so Raya is going to come back in for Dubravka, Timber for Krupi, Gabriel for Senesi, and Haaland for Evan-Nilsson. And here we see the first problem, the bench. The budget enablers from Wildcard 24 now pose a real issue in our squad, and as we have a look at the remaining fixtures from Game Week 32 to the end of the season, Bournemouth, who we tripled up on for their good fixture run, now sit third from bottom in the ticker. And on top of that, in the build-up to Game Week 32, from the moment that the Game Week 31 deadline passes, we'll be on a 3-week break from FPL due to the international break, immediately followed by the FA Cup quarterfinals. During this time, managers on Wildcard 32 will be tinkering away to find the optimal double Game Week 33 squad. Plus, by the time that the Game Week 32 deadline rolls around, the FA Cup quarterfinals will have been played, so we'll have full knowledge of the upcoming doubles and blanks by that point, meaning the drafts that Wildcard 24 managers are going to have to compete with from those on Wildcard 32 could be immense. And that's the reason why we've rolled up to the maximum of 5 free transfers here, which can only be achieved by making 3 or fewer transfers from Game Week 25 through to Game Week 32, assuming that you had only 1 free transfer when you played the wildcard in Game Week 24. The issue is that it just doesn't leave any room for injuries or players falling out of favour, nor does it give you the opportunity to hop on the latest in-form or high-scoring asset between now and Game Week 32. So if you're the kind of manager who makes impulse transfers, I'd think really hard about pulling the trigger on Wildcard 24. But what Wildcard 24 does offer is the opportunity to completely rip up your old team and mop up as many points as possible between now and Game Week 32, where non-wildcard players will be biding their time, making a few transfers here and there. It's still a viable option if you've got multiple injuries or players who aren't getting starts, if you've got multiple players who are performing drastically below the expectations of their value, or if you've got no Chelsea or Arsenal coverage for the next 4 game weeks and no transfers to get there. And the one extra case that I'd say, which I haven't heard a lot of other people mention, is just for the enjoyment of the game. With Wildcard 32 the leading strategy, and a whopping 3 weeks to construct the team with confirmed doubles and blanks, the template is going to be likely very well defined. If you've had a bad season so far, are fed up with lots of your picks, and it's 50-50 whether you even bother to log on to update your team week to week, Wildcard 24 could be the perfect way to revitalise your enjoyment in the game. Personally, I've had some of the most fun and some of the most fulfillment playing FPL when going for a differential chip strategy, because it forces you to play the game your way, and when a differential pick that you've chosen yourself hauls, that's what FPL is really all about. So if that's you and you're taking the plunge on Wildcard 24, let's move back to Game Week 24 to look at Captaincy. We'll be looking at predicted points courtesy of FPL Review and Fantasy Football Hub. It's a relatively close battle between an out-of-form Haaland and an in-form Bruno this week, and this is compounded by the uncertainty around United's ability to break through oppositions who are happy to play a low block. But for all his routes to points and the real possibility that Carrick's bolstered attacking side can do some real damage at home, my captaincy for Game Week 24, both in the wildcard draft and what I'll be using in my own team, will be on Bruno Fernandes. The vice captaincy therefore goes to Haaland for Game Week 24. Now, if you are keen to go without Raya, either because you've not got the funds, you really want to bring in Rice, or you don't like the idea of a keeper with a 6-point ceiling, all of which are valid points, or you've just got a couple of free transfers banked and you want to use them to go slightly more differential on the wildcard, let's take a look at an alternative Wildcard 24 draft. So for this version of the draft, we'll be swapping Senesi for Hill to give us the extra funds to redistribute to the rest of our team. After that, we're going to start by switching Raya to Sanchez and Chalobah to Anderson, shifting the Chelsea defensive cover from defender to keeper. And as for which defender you actually choose, there are plenty of options here. Maguire is an interesting pick and slightly cheaper, particularly for the short term, but there is some uncertainty around minutes with De Ligt's impending return from injury. Jimenez is also an asset who's had a lot of interest from managers in the past week, but with Bournemouth signing Rayan, he's an avoid due to his position that he'll be playing from now on. Senesi is a great alternative if you have got the funds to go here. Richards is a great value asset but an avoid on Wildcard 24 as he'll blank in Game Week 31. Mukiele's a solid option for Defcon, plus on long throws with some attacking threat, but Sunderland's long-term fixtures aren't ideal. And Dorgu, who was a popular buy this week until being ruled out with injury. We'll then swap Dubravka for Jose Sarr, giving you the option to bench boost in Game Week 26 if it looks like your 3 outfield bench players have decent fixtures that week. We can then use the spare funds from Raya and Chalobah to upgrade Douglas Luiz to Rice. And to offer somewhat of a differential option for this draft, we'll swap Evan-Nilsson for João Pedro. João Pedro has provided 2 goals and an assist in his last 2 games. However, his minutes aren't fully nailed, sharing the position with Delap, although he is the first choice. So if you're okay with the fact that he'll likely be benched for one of the next 4 games, and you expect him to outscore some of the safer forward options like Evan-Nilsson or Thiago over that run, there are a few picks with higher potential upside than João Pedro. We'll then be substituting Rice on for Anderson, switching from a 4-4-2 to a 3-5-2 for the next 4 game weeks. And then moving on to Game Week 25. We've got 2 free transfers here, which is the position you'll be in if you'd rolled an extra transfer into Game Week 24 before you played the wildcard. And don't worry, if you then used both those transfers and activated the wildcard afterwards, you'll get them both back for Game Week 25. So then on to Game Week 26. We've got an incredible looking squad for Game Week 26, with Anderson the only player with a tough fixture and 4 double Game Week players. If you do want to use the bench boost early, this is likely the structure to go with. And then on to Game Week 28. As before, we'll look to shed the Chelsea players after their fixture swing, and again we'll be targeting Brentford, this time moving Sanchez to Kelleher and João Pedro to Thiago. However, thanks to having an extra transfer rolled into Game Week 24, we can afford to make a third transfer and still manage to roll up to 5 free transfers by Game Week 31, so the third transfer we'll be making is Enzo to Wilson. This is what ultimately facilitates going for a Chelsea triple up in Wildcard 24, by allowing us to offload the extra player in Game Week 28. But we're still not totally out of the woods yet. Looking on to Game Week 31, we'll bench the same players as before, Haaland for Krupi, Timber for Hill, and Gabriel for Anderson. However, because our blank Game Week player is Sarr rather than Raya, our third Arsenal player is stuck without a place on the bench. This unfortunately necessitates selling Rice in addition to Munoz, and as before we'll move Munoz to cash, but we'll also additionally now need to move Rice to Sharda. So by the time that we get to Game Week 32, we'll bring back our bench players, so Haaland for Krupi, Timber for Hill, and Gabriel for Anderson, but we're now left with only 2 Arsenal players, with a maximum of 4 free transfers, having been required to use 2 in Game Week 31. This drives home the benefit of sticking with triple Arsenal defence on Wildcard 24, even if you're in the lucky position to have extra transfers to burn between Game Week 24 and Game Week 32. And even with that, much like the previous draft, we're still in a tricky position, as many of our key assets such as Fulham and Bournemouth players fall off heavily in fixture quality from this point forwards. So finally, rolling back to Game Week 24, and looking at the predicted points for this game week. We'll have no changes for captaincy with this draft, although I would consider a fun punt on João Pedro for the vice captaincy. And that's going to wrap up my Game Week 24 Wildcard Special. Drop a comment with any questions you need answering for your team in Game Week 24, and I'll respond with my thoughts before the deadline. This video took a massive amount of time to put together, so if you enjoyed it or found it useful, a like and subscribe would go a massive way in supporting this new channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back before the deadline for my usual weekly Game Week 24 team selection. Best of luck, and fingers crossed for another green arrow.